Hello, everyone. This is Jonathan Little, and I'm here today with the 8th episode of Weekly Poker Hand. We made it to 2 months. We're officially doing it. Today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a concept that is not really applied too much in No Limit Hold'em, but it is applied very often in Limit Hold'em, and it is the concept of cleaning up your equity. I'll show you what I mean. This is going to be from a No Limit tournament, by the way. This is from I believe it's a $5,000 tournament that took place in Canada, maybe in Montreal, maybe it was 3,500. Anyways, it's a World Poker Tour event, fairly high stakes, but at the same time, there are a lot of satellite qualifiers in the tournament, so it's not a particularly tough field. So in this hand, seat 6 raises to 400, and the weak guy in seat 2 calls. I have about 200 big blinds in the hijack seat with 10-8 suited. So under the gun raise, second position call. We are playing only 8-handed. With 10-8 suited, I love seeing a flop. I don't really see any other possible option we can take. With your fairly good suited connected hands, you really do want to be taking flops when you're very deep stacked, especially when you have position on the pre-flop raiser. And even if you're out of position with a hand that this good, you're probably going to want to see a flop when you're super deep stacked because it gives you a lot of potential after the flop. Or it gives you nothing, in which case you can just fold. So I call, button calls, small blind calls, and big blind calls. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 people in this pot. So the pot's 2,600, which is pretty big. All of a sudden, it's about a tenth of our starting stack of 30,000 chips. So we're already playing a pretty real pot here with this top pair bad kicker. And we do have top pair. The flop came 8 of clubs, 3 of clubs, 2 of diamonds. So let's see what happens. Small blind checks, big blind checks, under the gun checks, and button. I'm skipping forward on the video, I apologize. And the second position player bets 800. And I had two options in this scenario. I think my play was either to raise or to call. I'm certainly not folding with top pair bad kicker on the 8-3-2 board. I'm just going to fix the video here. I kind of messed it up. So if I elect to call, I have to ask what's going to happen when the players yet to act decide to continue in the hand. So for example, say I call, what hands will the button, the small blind, the big blind, and under the gun continue with? And the answer is it's going to be a lot of made hands that either have a decent amount of equity against me or actually have me beat, which is not really what I want. However, if I raise, I think we can conceivably get a lot of the players yet to act to fold most hands that have an 8 in them, top pair, and also all hands worse than that. And also, we may get our opponents to fold out a lot of their marginal draws that have tons of equity. Like whenever it goes 800 and then I'm going to raise to 1900, if seat 4, who is the small blind, is sitting here with 5-4 offsuit on 8-3-2, he's probably just going to fold because he's out of position and he's in a pretty tricky spot where he's not going to be able to get paid off consistently whenever he hits. The same thing goes if someone has a marginal flush draw, like King 6 of clubs. That player's going to have a really tough time continuing later in the hand. If our opponent's sitting here with ace-8, I think he probably should fold as well. So raising puts our opponents in a very difficult spot, whereas if I call, that allows them to stay in the pot with numerous hands. So we also have to ask, what is the initial better betting with? And as you see in this hand, he had pocket 5s, which I think is a fine bet, by the way. But if he's only betting with hands that beat mine, like top pair, top kicker, or better, which is probably not the case against most players, but sometimes it's true. If they're only betting with a very tight range in this scenario, we probably do not need to raise. We're probably happier just calling and playing our hands sort of like a weak draw. But against a weak player who would conceivably bet a lot of random hands he perceives as good, I think raising is an excellent option because we're going to get value from that player, the player who bet the flop, and we're also going to force out a lot of better hands behind me. I remember in this hand, I made it 1900, and then it got around to the small blind, and he tanked forever. Tank, 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 finally folds. Then it got around to the big blind. He tanked forever, and he finally folded. And then the player who bet the flop, second position, decided to call. So the turn's the 9 of diamonds. Now there are 2 clubs and 2 diamonds on board. I have none of that. My opponent in second position checks. and I have to figure out if I want to check or bet. At this point, I think I could easily be beat. I don't think it's inconceivable that I am beat in this scenario. If my opponent has an overpair, he's never folding. If he has a good 8, he's probably not folding. So at this point, I think I got my value on the flop, and the hands that will call a turn bet probably have me beat. Or they're good draws and they have tons of equity. So either way, I don't really think I need to be betting on the turn with my middle pair. And whenever I check behind on the turn, I think my plan is to call on most safe rivers, although it's certainly dicey against a player who is sort of perceived as weak in my mind. So I don't exactly know what I'm going to do on the river, but I'm going to make an in-game decision. And then the river is the 7 of clubs, which is a terrible card, because now I lose to all the flush draws as well, and I also lose to 8-7, and I lose to 9-8. So I'm really not beating a whole lot by the river besides exactly under pairs or random ace-high hands, or perhaps something like ace-4 or 5-4. So is there any value in betting? Well, he's going to fold anytime he has ace-high, and if he has 8-6 or worse, he's probably going to fold. So I don't think there's any value in betting. So the next question becomes, is there value in bluffing? And the question then becomes, will he fold pocket 10s? Because that's pretty much the next hand up on the hand ranking chart. And I think the answer is probably not. I don't think many people are folding on this river, even with when the third club comes in. I think most players who have pocket 10s in this scenario are going to perceive it to be a very strong hand, and they're just not going to release it. So I don't think betting has much merit at all, because the only hands that are going to call my river bet have me beat, and the only hands that will fold my river bet are the hands that I already beat by checking. So I think this is an extraordinarily easy check on the river. It's about as easy of a check as it comes. And my opponent does show pocket 5s, and I win the hand. So whenever I bet the flop, or whenever I raise the flop, this guy definitely should have folded his 5s. That's a very trivial fold, because my raising range is going to be a lot of very good draws, or at least flush draws and better, which of course are going to have some random overcards to pocket 5s, or an 8, or a sporadic bluff with something like ace-2, maybe, or ace-4. And with those hands, I'm probably going to be firing away on the turn in the river and put my opponent in a really bad spot when he has pocket 5s. So I definitely hate my opponent's flop call. His call of my raise, I mean. And after the hand, whenever the hands got shown down, seat 5, the big blind, got really unhappy. He's like, oh man, I folded 8-7. I would have gotten there. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, you made a good fold on the flop. And then seat 4 all of a sudden chimes in, man, I folded pocket 9s. So he would have made a set and ended up winning. And by raising on this flop, I actually put him in such a bad spot because he's out of position with, an overpair, but he has to ask himself, if he's smart, how is this hand going to play out on the turn in the river? So whenever I raise the flop, and if he calls, on the turn, if he checks and I bet, and the turn's any overcard or any club, or perhaps even a 6, maybe even a 5 or a 4 if I'm kind of getting after it, he's going to be extraordinarily unhappy. So on a lot of turns, he's going to be in bad shape if I bet again. And then if I bet again on the river, he's just also in very bad shape. So I actually think this was a pretty good fold by the small blind with pocket 9s that I don't think very many people will make, assuming he thinks my raising range is mostly good hands and good draws. I see some players in seat 4 re-raise, and I think that's an atrocious play because it allows me to play perfectly. I'll usually call with all of my very good draws and realize my equity, or I will call with all of my extraordinarily good hands and trap my opponent. So notice that by raising the flop in this scenario, I made some hands that had equity, or even the best hand, pocket 9s, and also 8-7, which had equity, fold. And we got called by pocket 5. So this hand worked out about as perfectly as possible. And I scooped a nice little pot early in the tournament with what ended up being middle pair bad kicker. So thank you guys very much for watching. I recognize this is sort of an advanced concept, but I think that it's good to show these advanced concepts. Normally these are the types of topics I cover in my webinars. I try to really dig into a specific topic in my webinars. You can check them out actually at jonathanlittlepoker.com on the products tab. So check that out. I think that if you are interested in getting better at poker without paying a coach something like $300 or $500 an hour to teach you personally, I think that the webinars are an excellent way to get a lot of good coaching relatively cheaply. So check that out, jonathanlittlepoker.com, and click on the products tab for the training videos. So thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you next week.